There were just so many little factors that came into play that made living daily life back in America so difficult. Feeling a little self-conscious about the bright lip color today, but we're gonna roll with it. Good morning, Fearless fam, and welcome back to Mental Health Monday. Today's topic is all about reverse culture shock, which I personally have experienced twice. If you're new here, I deal with anxiety and I've dealt with depression during different times in my life, but I don't let that shit stop me from traveling. And personally, I feel that a mental health issue is obviously going to affect the way that you deal with reverse culture shock, but it won't change whether or not you do experience reverse culture shock, in my personal opinion. In this video, I'm going to give you a brief explanation of what reverse culture shock is. I'm going to explain some of the signs that indicate that you might be experiencing reverse culture shock. I'm going to share my story, and at the very end, I'll share my top tips for coping with reverse culture shock and working your way through it. If you are already part of the Fearless fam, be sure to stay tuned to the very end for a Fearless fam update. I have an important question for you. And if you're new here, why don't you hit that little subscribe button down below, because then you can join the Fearless fam, which might be the most anxious group of fearless travelers on the internet. So first of all, reverse culture shock is basically when you come home after living abroad and you experience culture shock in your home country. And you might be asking yourself, how the hell is it possible for me to experience culture shock in a culture that I literally grew up in? Oh, it's possible. Trust me, I've experienced this twice. Basically, anything that made the adjustment hard in the first place, so anything that caused you to have culture shock in that new country you moved to, that's going to be the same stuff that will cause culture shock when you return home. In my personal opinion, the hardest part of reverse culture shock is the fact that it's really not recognized. Everyone knows about culture shock, even people who don't travel. But there are few people in my personal life who realize and recognize and agree that reverse culture shock is a thing. Reverse culture shock can be harder for young people, for people who are moving back home after living abroad for the very first time, and there's a lot of other variables that can affect it. If you're away for a long time, it can up the amount of reverse culture shock you experience. If that new culture you were experiencing and living in is very different from your home culture, it's going to make things a little harder. There's just a lot of variables. So reverse culture shock looks different for everybody. I experienced it once coming back from Ireland, which sounds crazy. Ireland to the US, that should be an easy transition, right? Nope. And then I experienced it again coming back from China. That one's a little more understandable for like your average Joe, but you would be surprised at the lack of support that I experienced on my return home. So the signs that you might be experiencing reverse culture shock start with that sinking feeling when you arrive home where you realize that your awesome adventure is over. It can be a very sad feeling, and that in itself is not reverse culture shock, but it certainly plays into the post-life abroad coping process. You might experience mood changes, like really drastic mood changes. Personally, I have mood changes fairly often because I deal with anxiety, so it can be really hard for me personally to separate the two and recognize the fact that, yeah, this is reverse culture shock. This is not your regular anxiety, so you need to cope with it differently. So it can be a little bit more difficult in this regard for people who deal with mental illness. A telltale sign that you're experiencing reverse culture shock is if you continue finding fault after fault after fault with your home country. Sometimes faults that you've never even seen as a fault before. And on top of that, you have all these different things from your home country that you're missing, and you keep thinking, in that new country that I used to be in, it was so much better. Hey, what are you doing? What? You think you can just come in on mommy's video? Kid's got some nerve. Basically, if you come home to your home country and your home country feels like a bad boyfriend you want to break up with, but you can't, and you keep reminiscing about your ex that you just left and that you think they're so perfect, like your old country is so perfect that you used to live in, now you're back in your stupid home country, that's probably reverse culture shock. The last sign of reverse culture shock that I'm going to talk about is wanting to talk about the country you just moved away from constantly and not giving a single shit about about whatever had been going on in your home country when you came back. Basically, you have these people at home and you want to just explain everything that happened and you're so excited to share it with them, but they don't really want to listen. They want to explain all the things that happened at home while you were gone, and they're really excited, but you don't want to listen. And it's this really lonely process of like, you thought it was going to be exciting to see everybody again, but it's kind of depressing, actually. As I film this video, I'm realizing that reverse culture shock is really hard to explain, and it's like this intangible entity that no one understands fully. And I think it has to do with the fact that there's a lot of complexity and variables behind it. I don't know, guys. I hope I'm doing an okay explanation of explaining what reverse culture shock is and what the signs are, but I feel like I'm doing a really bad job. One thing I know I can talk about successfully is my story. So I lived in Ireland for 5 months back in 2011. That was my first time ever being abroad, and I was living there. So when I returned home, I remember thinking, oh, it's gonna be so nice to have this and this and this, and people are gonna be so excited about my Ireland experiences. And I came back and I was like, the US is stupid, Ireland is the best, I want to leave here immediately. Nobody gives a shit that I just traveled, but it has changed my life and I'm so different and no one sees that. It was such a lonely, sad experience to feel like I had this awesome journey that I went on, and people were, yeah, on the surface excited, but they didn't actually care about hearing about what my daily life was like. And to be honest, I didn't really care about hearing what their daily life was like when I was gone, so it kind of goes both ways. I didn't understand why everybody was smiling so much. I kind of almost missed the like celebrity status that I had in Ireland. Like when you're a foreigner living abroad, you obviously get noticed more, and you would think that going to Ireland as a white person, I almost said a white warren, as a white person in Ireland, you would think, oh, that's not very hard to deal with. You probably look Irish. No, I don't look Irish at all. My second night in Ireland, I was up on the balcony of my flat, just kind of like hanging out, and this guy walked by, this Irish guy, and he yells up, when did you get off the boat? I was like, how the hell can you tell that I'm not Irish in the dark from 3 stories below? That was immediately when I was in Ireland, I was like, okay, this is gonna be a little different. So when I came home, you know, I didn't get recognized as like a foreigner. I wasn't constantly going on cool adventures. The houses were too big and the food sizes were too big, and I had to adjust to being a pedestrian in a different driving culture. There's just a lot of cultural aspects in your home country that when you're living in it comes so naturally, but when you come back, feels super awkward. Reverse culture shock when I came back from China was a way different experience. Basically, when I came back from Ireland, it was less about like cultural aspects and daily living, and it was more about that sad like post living abroad depression almost that I was experiencing. When I came back from China, I wasn't experiencing as much of that depression because I had done a lot of reflection and I had expected to experience reverse culture shock, and there's a lot of things that I was prepared for. Luckily, I had the privilege of living in a house by myself for a full week with nobody but dogs to hang out with when I first got back from China, which was freaking awesome because everything was hard. Every single daily thing was hard. I wanted to throw my toilet paper in the trash can because that's what I had been doing for like 6 months. I was bagging my own groceries in America, which is a little unusual, so they kept saying thank you. Everybody was smiling at me and being super over-the-top friendly. I had to speak English to everybody. I had to start driving again. I forgot how to freaking pump gas, you guys. I forgot how to pump gas in my car. There were just so many little factors that came into play that made living daily life back in America so difficult. But what was harder than the actual daily living, so going to the grocery store and feeling really overwhelmed, why the hell is there a sign for peanut butter? Why is that its own aisle? Why is all the meat in tiny packages and it doesn't even look like a pig or a chicken? And the truly difficult part of coming home was feeling completely alone and feeling like this could be funny. It could be funny feeling awkward in the grocery store. It could be funny not knowing how to pump gas. It could be funny to explain to people that I threw my toilet paper in the trash can at my parents' house on the first day back. Sorry, Mom. But no, it wasn't funny. People were like, well, you're home, so you know how to do this. Because I had grown up in this place and I was from this place, I was expected to jump right back in exactly where I left off and have no adjustment problems whatsoever, which is fucking ridiculous. And that, I'm sorry, I just got like real sassy, but I feel very strongly, and this is why I wanted to make this video, because people need to understand and realize and recognize that reverse culture shock is real as you guys. I felt awkward and I felt anxious and I felt like nobody understood me. I love you, Mom. I love you so much. This is a good example for this video and I think everybody can learn from it, and that's the only reason I'm sharing it. My mom was like really confused as to how I could be struggling to interact with people in America and go to the grocery store and do all these basic things in America that I'd done for 20 plus years. So why are you having trouble with it all of a sudden? You were only in China for 1 year. It's not a math equation. It's not, I spent 20 years here, I spent 1 year here, so I'm 20 times more used to this environment. That's just not how it is. In its most basic form, my home culture has changed. I have changed. I have adapted to a new culture, and now I have to re-adapt to my old culture. I think culture manifests itself on a daily basis in such small, subtle, unrecognizable ways that if you've never had to readapt to a different culture for a long period of time and relearn how to live your daily life, it sounds like it'd be really difficult to understand why on earth someone would have trouble coming back home. So I can understand why it's not recognized or realized. I don't know any other way to explain it to you other than by telling you it's real. It's not just like some excuse for getting attention when you come back home from abroad. It's a real thing. It's hard and it's different for everybody. My number one tip for dealing with reverse culture shock is to realize that what you did is awesome and no one can take it away from you. My second tip for you is if you are watching this video in advance and you're expecting to experience reverse culture shock on your return home, first of all, good for you. It is a lot easier to deal with reverse culture shock if you anticipate that it's going to happen. And on the same note, it's really important to go easy on yourself because what you're experiencing is difficult to process in your own head. It's even more difficult to explain to other people. And so if you don't feel like you have the support system or like people are believing that you're really struggling, I think the number one most important thing to do is to go easy on yourself and be patient. Things will get better. Time will make it better. My third tip for dealing with reverse culture shock is to realize that your story is different from everybody else's story. And that's kind of cool. It's cool that you have this unique story. You come from a very specific place and you were living in a very specific place. And you have these very specific experiences. Trying to merge those two together and transition back into your old way of living is a totally unique experience to you. So you should own it. If you want to tell your story, tell your story. I have the opportunity to tell mine here on YouTube. If you want to just tell me your story on a Facebook message, I'm so down to hear it. I'm so down. So don't feel like you're alone. You are not alone. And that's actually my fourth and final tip for you, is that you are really not alone. This whole experience is anxiety inducing. It's depressing. It can feel very lonely and make you feel like you're in this little solitary bubble and you thought you were gonna have these cool, awesome reunions when you came home and they just fizzled out so quickly and they weren't what you expected. But you're not alone. I was actually daily vlogging during the whole time when I left China and came back to the US. So I have all those experiences where I'm very open with you guys about how I was feeling at the time and what I was experiencing. I have that all documented. So I have a playlist linked up above that'll start you at about when things got real. And it finishes up with my final thoughts on what it was like being back home in my home country. And finally, the Fearless Fam announcement. It's less of an announcement and more of a question. Fearless Fam, I am trying to take on yet another project, but this one is very near and dear to my heart. It is so important to what I'm trying to do here on YouTube and on my website, which is build a community of anxious badasses who constantly inspire each other to keep going, keep making decisions in life based on love rather than fear. If you love to travel and you're afraid of travel, go travel. Anyways, that's what the whole Fearless Fam is about, and that's been my dream for it forever. And now my question for you is, what, in your opinion, would be the easiest and most preferred way for you to have chats and discussions with the Fearless Fam? So for example, we could do this on a Snapchat group. I could make Facebook posts once a week or a couple times a week on a specific topic and we can comment back to each other. Third option is to have some kind of discussion board or forum or chat area with guided topics as well as kind of free-for-all places where you can start a discussion and get help from people on the Lauren Without Fear website. So basically it would be a forum that's hosted on my website. Actually, go check out my website. I haven't announced this yet, but it looks completely different than it used to. So you should go look. And finally, which is the one I'm leaning towards, I just want to make sure that it works for you guys as well, is if I create a subreddit. So basically I would create a Fearless Fam subreddit on reddit.com, and that would enable us to have guided discussions and allow you guys to bring up topics, get advice and help for living well with anxiety, traveling with anxiety, mental health issues. We can even give travel tips on there if you really want to. I just want a place where we can gather as a community and support each other. Comment below what would be best for you guys. And if not enough of you guys comment, I'm probably just going to go ahead and do it on Reddit, so get prepared for that. I'm super excited, you guys. I'm really excited to have these forums going. Honestly, when I started this channel, I thought that I was more passionate about travel. And as I go on, I'm realizing that discussing mental health openly and being really open and upfront with you guys right away and saying, you know, yes, I have anxiety. It's had a positive impact on the lives of more people than I ever thought it would. It's incredible, and it makes me feel so humbled, and I literally have goosebumps, and I feel awkward talking about it right now because I have anxiety, and that's the way things work. I just want a place where we can support each other, and I think this is the right step for us. And don't forget to add me on Facebook. Every time I post a new video, there's a little mini video that goes up on there so you can see what it's about, and it'll show up on your Facebook feed. So be sure to go like that page. That is listed up above. Thank you for watching today, guys. If you have any requests for future Mental Health Monday videos, be sure to comment it below, and I will see you tomorrow for Travel Talk Tuesday. Travel Talk Tuesday. Okay, bye!